Good afternoon. I am Dr. Shanker Singh and I am here with my virtual classes for 4th year BVSc and AHS students. In this class, today we will discuss about fibrous osteodystrophy. You people are knowing that this metabolic, or you can say the bone disorder, is also known as Osteodystrophia fibrosa, Osteitis fibrosa cystic, rubbery jaw syndrome in dogs, Bran disease, Miller's disease and big head disease in equines or horses. And this disease is a generalized metabolic bone disorder and caused by the prolonged and excessive action of parathyroid hormone on bones. This disease can be classified into, or it can be divided into primary hyperparathyroidism and secondary hyperparathyroidism. It means that this is a disease in which there is elevated level or elevated secretion of parathyroid hormones, which leads to extensive bone resorptions, fibrous connective tissue proliferation, cyst formation and insufficient mineralization of immature bones. If we will talk about the species of animal which are affected, it is frequently observed in horses and equines, and it is sporadically found in rabbits, camels, antelopes, pigs, goats and dogs. If you consider about the dogs in our country or throughout the world, mostly it is associated with renal secondary hyperparathyroidism, but in the developed countries this disease is not commonly associated with this nutritional secondary hyperparathyroidism in dogs, because they are providing balance, or you can say processed diet, which are manufactured by some food companies. But in our country the situation is entirely different. Here we are providing homemade diets, or our dogs are adapted as a vegetarianism. So we can find more cases of secondary hyperparathyroidism in dogs in our country. If you will talk about the etiology, first we will go with this primary hyperparathyroidism. This primary hyperparathyroidism means that there is excessive secretion of parathyroid hormone, that is PTH, or production of PTH is very high, and it can be due to autonomous functional lesion in parathyroid gland. It means that any lesion which is enhancing the secretion of PTH hormone, that is associated with this primary hyperparathyroidism, and it is mainly associated with adenomas of active chief cells which are secreting PTH hormone. It is also, or it can be associated occasionally with carcinoma of parathyroid glands. As you know that the control of parathyroid hormone or feedback of secretion of this parathyroid hormone is regulated by blood calcium level. When the calcium level is low, at that time there is a stimulation of secretion as well as increase in activity of PTH hormone. But in case of primary hyperparathyroidism, where there is adenocarcinoma or adenoma of chief cells, there will be no control over the feedback mechanism. It means that even the high level of blood calcium is there, still the secretion of this PTH hormone will not be stopped. But another or the disease which is most commonly observed, that is the secondary hyperparathyroidism. And this secondary hyperparathyroidism can be of nutritional origin or renal origin. I want to say that nutritional disparity or inadequate supply of calcium may be associated with the nutritional secondary hyperparathyroidism in young animals. But in older dogs, if you will talk about dogs, the chronic increase of the serum phosphorus concentration due to chronic renal disorder may be associated with secondary hypocalcemia. How this phosphorus is associated with secondary hypocalcemia? Going in detail, if you will remember that we have well discussed during the regular classes when we are talking about the milk fever. At that time, we have discussed that this is the feedback mechanism or the ability of high level of phosphorus is to inhibit one enzyme which is present in proximal tubule of kidney, that is called as 1-alpha hydroxylase. And you people are knowing that this enzyme is mainly associated with conversion of vitamin D2 into 125 dihydroxycholecalciferol. It means once this 1-alpha hydroxylase is inhibited, at that time the production or synthesis of vitamin D3 will be hampered, and this mechanism will induce lesser absorption because vitamin D3 is associated with gastrointestinal absorption of or receptor activation for the absorption of calcium. And if this D3 is low, at that time the gastric absorption or GI tract absorption of this vitamin calcium will be hampered, and ultimately there will be low level of or hypocalcemia will be there in blood. This feedback mechanism is utilized by this hyperphosphatemia because of the physiological demand of phosphorus to be regulated. As you know that the receptors in intestinal tract or reticulorumen of the animal which are associated with calcium absorption are also associated with absorption of the phosphorus. So, once the vitamin D3 is inhibited, the absorption of phosphorus will be slowed or will be hampered, but simultaneously the calcium absorption is equally affected, and animal suffers with hypocalcemic state. And once there is hypocalcemic state, at that time there will be increase in secretion of parathyroid hormone, and ultimately that parathyroid hormone is associated with bone resorption, what we call demineralization of the bones. In this section, if you are giving low calcium diet or high phosphorus diet, similar action will be there or similar activity will be there. So, next reason behind this or etiological factor which can be associated with the occurrence of nutritional hyperparathyroidism could be the feeding of plants which are having high oxalate contents. These oxalate containing plants are very palatable, and both in monogastric as well as ruminants, monogastric animals as well as in ruminants. This oxalate prevents, or you can say chelates ionized calcium, and ionized calcium is only the calcium which is going to be absorbed in the GI tract. So, ultimately there will be hypocalcemia if you are feeding large amount of oxalate containing plants. This oxalate is also having the activity when it get absorbed in the blood. At that time it precipitates the circulating calcium in the blood, and ultimately there will be hypocalcemia. Once there will be hypocalcemia, then there will be secondary hyperparathyroidism, and that will lead to activation of this bone resorption activity. Another factor which is most commonly associated with the equines, that is feeding of rice bran. If you will remember the previous classes, during discussion of this milk fever, we have talked about the strategy to prevent milk fever. In that section we have discussed that the phytic acid, which is the major component of rice bran, have ability to precipitate and thus have ability to impair the absorption of calcium in non-ruminants, particularly in monogastric animal like who are going to absorb calcium and phosphorus, calcium before its digestion or degradation of phytate like in equines. At that time we have discussed that the rumen bypass phytic acid or rice bran can be utilized for the prevention strategy of milk fever. In that section the modified rice bran is used, and this rice bran will leads to impairment in the absorption in the intestinal tract. But you people are knowing that ruminants are resistant for this phytic acid, because in rumen they have an enzyme that is called as phytase, and this phytase is responsible for degradation of phytic acid and phytates of the rice bran. But in monogastric animal, this phytase activity is not there before the absorption of this calcium. If you will talk about equines, in that species you people are knowing that the cellulose digestion is just behind the intestinal absorption. So, these animals are highly susceptible for feeding of the rice bran, or that's why it is also called as Bran disease in equines. Similarly, high grains and low forage diet to the horses is also associated with the occurrence of disease. High grain diet is having high content of phosphorus, and grain diets are usually low in calcium. So, if you will feed large amount of phosphorus, that will affect the 1-alpha hydroxylase, and once the 1-alpha hydroxylase will be inhibited, you have, as we have discussed, the whole phenomena will take place and secondary hyperparathyroidism will be established. Similarly, vegetarian diet for dogs, those diets which are high in fiber like chapatis and breads which are offered to our dogs in our country, or homemade diets which are totally on high grain diet, that are mostly associated with occurrence of this secondary osteodystrophy or osteodystrophic condition in dogs. The calcium phosphorus ratio in the diet is very important, and the desirable ratio for calcium and phosphorus in diet should be 2:1. But once this calcium phosphorus ratio is disturbed in the diet, like if it is 1 is to 2.9 or more than greater than this 1 is to 2.9, it can produce the osteodystrophia fibrosa in equines. Similarly, goats, this disease is usually observed in goats. Mainly it is observed in those goats which are stall fed and they were fed on high concentrate diets or high grain diets like wheat, bhusa and chapati. The individual in our country or people or farmers of our country, they are rearing single goats and they are offering whole grain diet to their stall fed condition. For their religious purpose, single goats or goats are reared in the house and they were offered with the high grain diets as well as chapati and bhusa, and these are having high ratio or greater ratio for calcium phosphorus. It means that the diet which is having high phosphorus, that will induce the clinical condition of osteodystrophia in goats, even they are ruminant. What I think, if you are offering whole grain or whole wheat or you can say barley, this grains, the phytic acid of these grain are not completely degraded in the rumen of the goats, and they must, maybe there is quite possibility that the phytate which is available in or which is not degraded in the rumen, that may be hampering the absorption of calcium in intestine of the goats. So, dear friends, those farmers who are feeding their goats with this whole grain and chapati and homemade diets of human beings, they are considered to be or they may suffer with this clinical disease of osteodystrophia fibrosa. In dogs, as we said that vegetarianism is major cause, but dear friends, you should know that some non-vegetarian diets are also associated with this hypertrophic disease. How it is associated? Those people who are only feeding meat diet without supplementation or without giving bones, or in cats people are offering only heart, other bones and other things are not provided to the cats. In such situation, if you are feeding high amount or only meat and meat, at that time this meat content or heart content contains large amount of phosphorus, and it will create a situation just like a hyperphosphatemia, and high phosphorus diet will induce the similar manner as we have discussed earlier. It will inhibit 1 alpha hydroxylase and ultimately animal with suffer with osteodystrophia fibrosa or fibrous osteodystrophy. So, totally meat diet should also be avoided in dogs. Now, coming to pathogenesis of the disease, as you know that dietary insufficiency of calcium and or you can say excess of dietary phosphorus, as we have already discussed, if excess of phosphorus will be there, it will inhibit 1 alpha hydroxylase and thus the synthesis of vitamin D3 will be inhibited and ultimately the absorption of calcium will be low. Simultaneously, if you are providing insufficient calcium, then there will be hypocalcemia, and hypocalcemia will induce secondary hyperparathyroidism and there will be increase in release of parathyroid hormone. This parathyroid hormone regulates bone remodeling and skeletal turnover. We have well discussed how this bone remodeling and skeletal turnover is regulated by PTH during the class of milk fever. As you people are knowing that this PTH hormone increases the number as well as activity of osteoclast cell, and these osteoclast cells are associated with dissolution of bone minerals and degradation of bone collagen, and ultimately the bone resorption phenomena will be there because of increased osteoclastic activity, and finally the minerals are removed from the bone and these are replaced by fibrous connective tissue. So, there will be generalized demineralization of bone, and you should know that this demineralization, or you can say that resorption of bone, takes place generalized throughout the skeleton, but it is prominent in some local area like the bones which are cancellous or cancellous bones, that are also called as spongy bone or trabecular bone. These bones are mainly associated with the bone resorption, and the action of this PTH or elevated PTH is pronounced in trabecular bones or cancellous bones. If we will talk about the component of cancellous bones, it is mainly component of the epiphyseal long bone, ribs, shoulder blades and flat bones of the skull. This cancellous bone of skull, especially if you will talk about mandible and maxillae, they are most commonly affected. Why this mandible and maxillae are most commonly affected? The reason behind this is that they are having high rate of renovation. It means that they have very high turnover, and those bones which are under constant wear and tear, or you can say under renovation, they are mainly affected by the elevated level of parathyroid hormone, and thus once the level of parathyroid hormone is elevated, the osteoclastic activity leads to gradual softening of mandible and maxilla, and these bones become flexible and deform, and that ultimately that will lead to, or they may be prone for the fracture. Finally, the skull bones are commonly affected as we have discussed, and they become soft, swollen, deformed and predisposed to the pathological fracture. So, these are the pathophysiology and how these bones are going to be affected. Now, coming to the clinical finding, what will be the clinical manifestation of the disease? It is almost same in all species, but we will go here the specific lesions which are observed in specific species of animals. In horses, if you will talk about the shifting lameness are the characteristic of early stage of the disease. In more advanced cases, there will be severe injuries, fracture and visible sprains will be there, and fracture of lumbar vertebrae may be there. Swelling of lower and alveolar margin of the mandible will be the starting point, which will be followed by symmetric soft enlargement of the facial bones. Thus, facial hyperostosis, you can say the facial hyperostosis with partial obliteration of nasal cavity and respiratory interference may be observed. Initially, bony swellings are firm and pyramidal and start just above and anterior to the facial crest. There will be flattening of ribs, swelling of joints and curvature of long bones may be observed. In final stage, severe emaciation and anemia can be there. If we talk about goats, it commonly occurs in growing goats of 9 to 10 months is there will be a stunted growth, lameness, diarrhea and tongue protrusion. You can also observe symmetric enlargement of face and jaw, abnormality of prehension and mastication will be there. The eye wall will be prominent and enlarged bones are firm and painful on palpation. In goats especially, hind limbs may bend outward symmetrically from tarsal joints. These are the typical presentation of Osteodystrophia fibrosa in goats. If we talk about dogs and cats, lameness and fracture of long bones are characteristic of the disease. As we observe in equines, facial hyperostosis with partial obliteration of nasal cavity is also observed in dogs. Poorly mineralized, or you can say woven bone or moth eaten are the characteristic of radiographic examination in dogs. Highly vascular connective tissue will be there and loss or loosening of teeth may be observed in dogs. Due to inability to close the mouth, there may be presence of gingival ulcers. So, in advanced cases, you can say the skull bones are markedly thin and mandible can be twisted after application of firm finger, or just you can press that mandible, it will be twisted. So, there will be loss of osteoid and severe fibrous osteodystrophy will be there in that condition, and due to twisting of mandible and it will appears like a rubber. That is why it is also called as rubber jaw syndrome in dogs. Commonly it is observed in renal hyperparathyroidism, but it is also observed in case of nutritional hyperparathyroidism. Dear friends, what I want to say that this swelling of, if you are finding the swelling of maxillae, people are overdiagnosing and they are saying it can be due to the nasal mycosis. But how to differentiate? If you will find that if your dog is suffering with this Osteodystrophia fibrosa or fibrous osteodystrophy, in that condition both mandible as well as maxilla are affected. If it is a case of nasal mycosis, in that condition mandible should not be affected and there will not be deformity in the mandible. So, if you are observing or you are detecting deformity in the mandible as well as maxilla, then you should always consider about the Osteodystrophia fibrosa. Now, how it will be diagnosed, that is very important. The clinical signs are one of the most important. You have to notice the clinical signs. Second to that is the biochemical alterations. Third diagnostic tool is the radiography, as we have discussed that the bone, appearance of bone will be moth eaten or spongy, or you can go for histopathology. Especially in equines, no significant change in the blood biochemistry is demonstrated, but radiography you will find increased translucency of the mandibles and maxillae, decreased level of calcium, increased level of phosphorus and increased level of alkaline phosphatase are characteristic of secondary hyperparathyroidism in dogs and goats. Why I am saying secondary hyperparathyroidism? Because we have already discussed the high level of phosphorus is associated with this disorder, bone disorder. But if you talk about the primary hyperparathyroidism, how will you differentiate between the secondary hyperparathyroidism and primary hyperparathyroidism? In primary hyperparathyroidism, we know that the feedback checking, you can say, or inhibition of PTH secretion is not maintained by the calcium level. It means that the level of calcium in blood will not be low. So, because it is not going to regulate, but because of adenoma of the parathyroid gland, there is constant secretion of this PTH hormone, and that will leads to demineralization of the bone or bone resorption, you can say. So, the calcium level in blood will be high. Are you getting my point? Once there will be demineralization from bone, the calcium will come out from the bone into the circulation, but that is not able to inhibit the feedback mechanism of PTH. So, if you will estimate the exact total calcium or blood calcium level, it will be higher. If you talk about the dogs, the normal calcium level in dogs is 10 plus minus 1 milligram per dl. But in such situation, if animal is suffering from primary hyperparathyroidism, at that time there may be 12 to 20 milligram per dl calcium level in dogs. So, you have to be very careful if you are suspecting that calcium level is high. You can observe low phosphorus level or even normal phosphorus level, or that can be below 4 milligram per dl. But in both conditions, alkaline phosphatase activity will be high. You can also go for detection of this parathyroid hormone, but that is a very tedious job. In both cases, you will find high level of parathyroid hormone. If you are suspecting that it's secondary hyperparathyroidism due to renal disorder, in that situation, you should also go for estimation of biomarkers of renal disorders like Bran and creatinine. You will find at that situation high level of phosphorus, low level of calcium, high level of ALKP and high level of Bran and creatinine. That is indicative of chronic renal disorder. You can also detect, as we have already discussed so many times, that once there is increased bone resorption or osteoclastic activity is there, then there will be increase in concentration of hydroxyproline, which will be excreted in the urine. So, high level of hydroxyproline can be detected in the urine. Another thing which should be monitored, if there is high level of urinary calcium and phosphorus, at that time it usually occurs in cases of primary hyperparathyroidism. There will be chance of occurrence of precipitation of these minerals and urolithiasis will be there. So, friends, on the basis of this, you can diagnose a clinical case of osteodystrophia fibrosa. Now, how this case can be treated or can be managed? The first management protocol is the dietary calcium phosphorus ratio management, and you should know, once you will adjust the dietary calcium phosphorus level, and it should be checked in a such a ratio that it will be 1:1, or it should never be more than 1:1.4. So, if you will enhance the calcium level or lower the phosphorus level, then the ultimate outcome will be the repair of the bone, and once again this phosphorus level will be down and calcium level will be high. You should know that the half life of parathyroid hormone is just 15 minutes, and within 24 to 48 hours the desired effect of calcium supplementation can be observed, and this demineralization will be shifted towards the mineralization side once the parathyroid hormone is down. So, you should provide cereal hay like alfalfa and clover hay that are having high content of calcium for the ruminants if they are suffering with. In ruminants, I want to discuss here the plants which are containing high amount of oxalate should be avoided, specifically in the growing animals. What we are observing if you will go in Purvanchal and Bihar area, people are just feeding the paddy straw to the growing animal as a sole diet, and you should know this paddy straw is having high level of oxalate, and that oxalate is associated with recumbency in the growing animal especially during the winter season, because during the winter season only this paddy straw are available. So, friends, if you are finding the calf or buffalo calf is unable to rise, or they are having lameness, or they are having enlargement of the joint, you should always suspect about the feeding habit, or if you should ask to the owner, are they giving this paddy straw to their animals? That can be the one of the cause of the recumbency in the growing cattle. Similarly, you can also provide finely grounded limestone, and it can be given at the dose rate of 30 gram per day in equines. One more thing you should remember, administration or supplementation of DCP, dicalcium phosphate, and bone meal should be avoided, because we have already discussed in previous classes that DCP and bone meal are having high content of phosphorus. So, we have to be careful while feeding or while supplementing the minerals. Next, methodology by which you can manage the cases, especially in dogs, is administration of calcitriol, that is vitamin D3, along with oral supplementation of phosphate binders and management of underlying renal diseases if you are suspecting for the renal origin of secondary hyperparathyroidism. Once you will provide this or inject or supplement with vitamin D3, that will enhance the intestinal absorption of calcium, and ultimately the secondary hyperparathyroidism feedback mechanism will be there, and the secretion of secondary hyperparathyroidism or secretion of parathyroid hormone will be diminished. The prescription diets are also available with restricted phosphorus diet that can be used. You can also provide high calcium diet to your dog, and that will be beneficial for the animals. If owner is providing only solely meat or heart to their dogs and cat, you should ask them to feed heart or meat along with bones. Otherwise, you have to supplement additional calcium in those animals. Solely meat feeding is not permitted if animal is suffering from this osteodystrophia fibrosa. And the interesting thing of this disease is that even the severe lesion may disappear in the time with proper treatment. So, it is very happy ending that if you will diagnose properly and if you will manage, your case will be recovered completely. The swelling of the bone will disappear, and this is the beauty of this disease. So, friends, I request you go through this virtual class and I hope you must be benefited with this class. Thank you very much.